But today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite artists, this guy, Robert Arneson. And he is such an interesting character. He sadly is not with us anymore, but Jeanette, what's your connection to Robert Arneson? Like, why do you love his artwork so much?
Well, I think I was first sort of aware of him just as a local Bay Area artist. I'm really excited. I think our last time we did this together, we did Ruth Asawa, and then here we're doing another artist that's really made such an impact here in the Bay Area and stayed here in the Bay Area, um, even at a time, well, it probably is still true, where New York is sort of the center of the art world in the US, and choosing to stay on the West Coast and choosing to stay in the Bay Area um, is is almost subversive. And as we'll see, a lot of his work is a little bit subversive as well, or irreverent, maybe.
I like
Yeah,
Subversive. I think that Subversive
yeah,
is
yeah,
he's kind of a troublemaker,
yeah.
as many modern artists have been. And I do think he is sort of an echo of one of the great original provocateurs, uh, Marcel Duchamp. But we'll get to that. So he's been gone now for 34 years. Born and died in Benicia, and had strong connections to that town his whole life. And there's some of his public artwork is available in Benicia. But we call this program Robert Arneson California Artist because this is one of his works, California Artist. Jeanette, do you want to tell the story behind this or
No,
um,
you go ahead.
okay. Well, this came about because he had shown artwork in New York, as Jeanette was talking about. That was and still is the center of the art universe, I suppose. But his stuff was really panned by some critics, and they said that like he was kind of he represented California artists who were kind of empty-headed and not to be taken seriously. And this is pretty much a literal response to that, where this sculpture, maybe we can see a little better in this other picture, um, it is hollow inside. So through these glasses, you can see inside of his head. So he's literally empty-headed, and he's on this pedestal with a marijuana plant and beer cans and a bottle of wine, and he's just kind of like saying to the New York establishment, "Guess what? I don't really care what you think." Or we could use other language, but we won't here on Art Viewing Adventures. He's kind of really giving it back to them, saying, "I do not really care what you think of me."
Like embracing all of the criticism and like elevating almost.
Yeah, because
Uh,
why try to be like the New York artists? Why not? The modern art world is always about trying to distinguish yourself, trying to carve out your own lane. And he very much does this.
yeah, absolutely. And in a way that's not elitist. I mean, except that he is among the elite of the art world, um, but not in a way that is too serious, if that makes sense.
I mean, I get the sense he was very approachable. I've met people who told me they would regularly drink beers and maybe even smoke a joint with him. He was a professor at UC Davis, and we'll get to some works toward the end of the program that are on the UC Davis campus. And I just have to believe he was very, very approachable. And then the other thing to comment on here, Jeanette, is, this is a depiction of himself, and we're going to see a lot of sculptural self-portraits. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, obviously, if you are an artist, the model that you have access to 100% of the time is yourself. So, but the amount of work that he creates that is modeled on himself, all of his basically self-portraits all the way down, um, is is really above and beyond what you'll see with a lot of other artists. And I think some people have kind of, talked about him as maybe a bit of a narcissist, but I also I think that he just he liked to sort of like poke fun of himself a little bit too, or lighten the mood, and he doesn't always portray himself as well, we'll see with examples.
Yeah, can you imagine
um
Jackson Pollock doing something like this?
no, but he took himself more seriously.
He
He
did.
was a New
All those
York
guys
artist.
did.
Yeah.
And this is the study that he did for it. So he's like taking photographs of himself. You can see this here, and showing himself from different angles.
And it's not just that he's like modeling himself. Look at the expressions that he puts on his face. I mean, I just love it. I think it's so much fun.
Yeah. Anyone in the audience have any thoughts? Anybody also have a connection to this artwork that they'd care to share? You feel free to unmute if you want. This is in the collection of SF MoMA, and it's been on display in fairly recent memory. I don't think it's on display right now. I'd love to see them bring it back. Here is it's from this review of his work in New York. It says the celebration of kitsch, low taste, visual gags, facetious narrative, and a certain vein of sophomoric humor, a spirit best defined as defiant provincialism. This was the put down of him in the New York Times in 1981, and he's just fine with that.
We've got a comment from Marcia in the chat room. He gave us permission to be irreverent in art. Did the pot smoking get him there?
Yeah.
Maybe.
So moving on, here's another one. This is from earlier, so 1972, uh, Doyen, and kind of like I think he's being told, oh, you're an artist, you're a big deal, and this is him kind of responding, saying, no, I'm kind of this lovable curmudgeon.
Yeah. Yeah. And this one, the glasses look, is that mirrors or is it?
I mean, it looks almost like this one's broken, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken, but I think that's correct. I think that is the image, and he begins doing these self-portraits in the 1960s. So by 1972, he's done quite a few of them at this point.
We've got another comment from Gail in the chat. Navel gazing, but as a mirror providing his critics the chance to nasal gaze about him.
Yeah, I mean, he makes himself really the center of his artistic practice, but that is something we all really do. The people we know best are ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Here's a picture of him with his family. As I said, he was not from a wealthy family, he grew up in Benicia. His father was a hardworking man, and he went to schools there, and eventually will go to art school. Here he is. He gets a job teaching art at Menlo Atherton High School. If anybody's in the South Bay, it would have been near you guys. And he seems to, I think he enjoyed that, but he also kind of wanted to get beyond that. And then he gets this opportunity to move to Davis and be part of the UC Davis faculty. And this is his house in Davis, the middle of Davis. I believe he did some artwork of that reflects that house. He's not, it's not a place, a very happy place for him. His marriage will end. He will get remarried later on. Here he is at UC Davis, and this is where he fired a lot of his works, the TB9 kiln. And that's a whole other fascinating story, the kind of the art department at UC Davis. It's in a temporary building. That's what TB9, it's like temporary building number 9, although it's still standing. They never, I guess it became so important historically that they kept it. This is one I ran across driving across the country. And what's your reaction to this artwork, Jeanette?
Well, I'd love to hear from the audience too. Like, what thing, I mean, there's some obvious things that jump out to you, but what are you all thinking when you see this? Like, what's the thing that sticks out to you the most of the many things that can stick out? When you take another moment, like, what's another thing you notice? And then what's another thing you notice? Like the top three things. Anybody want to share?
Yeah, let's look deeply at this and
Yeah.
think about like what are the things that strike you about this and maybe some things you think he's trying to tell us. Give all the choices he made. So yeah, Marcia says the ear, the tongue, the mask. You
Yeah.
know, it's sort of a self-portrait, but it's also a masked self-portrait.
Yeah, and it's yeah, that's anybody else want to add a few things?
And I love that it's clown. It's clearly a clown's mask. I also think
Yeah.
technically it's like a pretty hard thing to do, what he's accomplished here.
Yeah. And yeah, it's to me when I first think about like the ear and the tongue, I think about like see no evil, hear no evil. I mean, it's kind of really exaggerating the hearing and the speaking part, like but I don't know that that's what he was going for, but I really love that the ear is so prominent, but he also is making the mouth prominent.
Yeah,
And then the yeah.
it's funny because it's like, kind of hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. And he's done funny things with his ears, in his eyes, in his mouth.
Yeah. And
Um,
this mask is so interesting because the mask, it's him. I mean, we've got his beard and his shaped face, but then it's almost like he's looking through his own face.
Yeah, I want to read some comments. We have
Yep.
been, first of all, Gail asks, do you know why so many artists, Arneson, Tebow, etc., are tied to and taught at UC Davis? I think it speaks to the excellence of the UC Davis art department. I think that it kind of built on itself, having someone like Wayne Tebow there, and then it kind of spawns this funk art movement in the 60s and 70s with a lot of other really cool artists. So he's very much part of a art a village of great artists doing different interesting things that are not the New York things. They're not abstract expressionism. What about you, Jeanette? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think like you said, once there are some artists of note, then like really other really good artists want to be part of that community. Of course, you want to also be inspired by artists, even if they aren't working in the same medium that you are. And so it comes down to who was there and then the renown of them and then other artists wanting to collaborate or just be around. And also I think that there was an opportunity um, by being California West Coast artists, Northern California artists, to have a place for them to not be like only thinking about this elite sort of New York art world.
Well, I think as someone who moved here from the East Coast, A lot of us do like to think of ourselves as not East Coasters. We left that place
Mm.
and we appreciate the things that make California different. And
Well, as someone who was born in California, I also really appreciate the things that make California different. And I think it's really, I, but I do understand that there was a pressure at this time and in all times, um, to want to be part of the art world, wherever it's located, and that a lot of these artists made a choice to stay in California, and I think that's reflected in the way that they create art too.
yeah. A few more comments. Roger said, I didn't know this about you, Roger. I didn't know of him, but oddly, I created a couple of self-portraits of my head with a beard at about the same time as demos for a pottery class I was teaching in San Francisco. Mine were a little stylized. They were incense burners. And then Gail says the heart is upside down. And Gail, I think I need to tell you that. I don't think that's a heart there. The blue thing in the middle of the clown is not a heart, but another bodily organ associated with romance, I guess. Um, I think it's funny that they're blue. Uh, and there's all these other great details. It says nasal officer below, kind of a play on it being a naval officer. And it's a loco clown. So lots of really cool things going on. Yeah, and Gail points out it is really big. Um, is he blue balled? Yeah, that's what it is. He is blue balled. Marcia says, seems to me he went the way of George Carlin, from straight-laced to far more intent on challenging norms, critics, etc. And I think in both cases, it was pot that grew their minds. I would say, Marcia, yes, and pot, and not just pot, but really the 60s. That both Carlin and Arneson, they were, they're older than the hippies, but they're very influenced by the kind of hippie outlook in this idea of like blowing up norms.
And it's hard to know whether it was by smoking pot they became like, or that they were already going in this direction and then they smoked pot. Yeah, like
Yeah,
which
it's
direction is
cause or
like,
effect.
either way there is some correlation perhaps, there, but it's hard to know which direction. I think about now, I mean, now, well, at least in California, pot is legal. And
Oh, yeah?
is that changing how artists are working? Um, and I don't know that it is, which makes me think that this was a lot tied, as you said, to the hippie culture and what was happening,
Yeah.
at the time. But it would be interesting to see, because I mean, pot hasn't been legal that long, and not that you needed it to be legal to smoke it. Plenty of people, yeah,
Yeah. But the bottom line is this guy is very irreverent.
yeah,
And we'll see some more of that. Let's like look. So here's another one where he loves sticking out his tongue.
yeah.
And
I
this
mean,
is yeah,
and one of the ways that he's irreverent is, we've talked a little bit about this contrast between West Coast and sort of New York artists, but also his medium. The fact that he's working in ceramics is also a subversive medium. At the time, abstract expressionism and what came after, it was, a lot of painting based, and ceramics has historically been seen as a craft instead of an elite artwork. And I mean, these days probably there's a lot less of that bias, but for a long time ceramics were artisan, maybe, or craft versus art, capital A art. And so just in the medium that he chose, he's a little bit irreverent or subversive as well.
Yeah, because there are like sculptors, but there's a lot of abstract sculpture going on.
Yeah,
And
but
this is
in
not that.
bronze.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
And then of course there's statues and all, but this is also kind of a contrast to that, where you're always trying to really dignify people in
Yeah.
the statue, and he's like, nah, no, I'm gonna be this irreverent artist.
Yeah.
And I love that it's like overcooked. And of course, when you have a ceramic artwork, you fire it. So he is kind of a cook in that sense. We've got another one here. This is in the collection at SF MoMA. Smorgy Bob the cook. It's on the second floor. I think it's on display right now. So many of you may have already seen this. And and it's also, so what's going on with it being entirely white, Jeanette? What are your thoughts on that?
I really like that it's entirely white because it really draws you in so that you if you just pass by, you're not going to see any details, but you have to look a little closer because there's no color to distinguish all of the different elements here. Um, it's totally interesting with the color, but also I like that the triangle shape of it,
Uh-huh.
um, and how it's sort of like a stage in that it comes up so you can see all of the various elements on it. Um, what do you think about this? This is him also with the chef hat on.
I mean, it is just, I mean, God knows how long it took to make this thing, It's got so much, it's quite large. And then it's got this table with a tablecloth, and I believe the tablecloth is also ceramic. So he is showing off his technical capabilities to be able to create something of this magnitude. And that's what he does. He is a cook. He does cook up this stuff. Only he doesn't cook up food that you can eat. I have no idea if he actually was a chef in real life, if he was known for making food, but he makes sculpture of food. We had a couple of comments I want to go back to just for a moment to clown because Marcia asked, well, why the big red ear? And I don't know if I have an answer for that. Jeanette, do you have any thoughts on why a big red ear?
I don't know. For me, it sort of evokes that like I had mentioned, the hear no evil, see no evil. Like what am I hearing? But it's also titled clown. And instead of a big red nose, like a big red clown nose, we have a big red clown ear.
Oh, okay.
Um, but I don't know what he's
Oh,
going for.
that's
Oh,
That's really good, Jeanette. I'm also impressed with that idea that like instead of the nose being red, which we would expect from a clown, it's the ear. So he's just messing with us in yet another way.
yeah.
That's what I, that's what we love about him. He is someone, as I said, a provocateur, as was Marcel Duchamp. And so then we had a comment from Gail. That's like a smokestack with his brains billowing out of the top. I like that. And then getting back to this, a comment. Roger reminds us of the food pyramid. Yeah, that's a great interpretation. That it is kind of a food pyramid with himself at the top. I'm not sure what that means. Marcia's comment, White says porcelain, perhaps a nod to a more high-end piece. And at this angle, the food would slide off, but his don't. Was he saying ceramics is here to stay in the art world? When you talk about the high-end art piece, Marcia, I wonder if you mean Marcel Duchamp's fountain, right? Because that's kind of the classic white porcelain artwork that changed the art world forever. And we're going to see, I think we're going to see another nod to that a little bit later on.
That's very impressive. Okay, I hadn't put that together, but yes.
Yeah, and this is just our, what's in our heads. We don't, I generally don't read like what the artist said or what critics say. But that's where I go with it anyway. All right, moving on. So here's like not a sculpture, but another self-portrait. He did quite a few drawings too. Do you like this one, Jeanette?
Well, I like the spirit behind it.
Yeah.
That for and what I the things I like about it are also kind of the things I'm not sure that I like about
Yeah.
it. We've got this moment where his eyes are so wide, and so and then we've got the tongue sticking out, and that's kind of, it's a little uncomfortable, even though, and then the title of it, tonguing, is a little uncomfortable, but in all the ways it should be, like all the ways he'd want us to be. And then I like the way that it's mixed media on paper, but if you look at how many lines on this are sort of like blue or green, like around his eyes, not just his eyebrows, but all around. We have all this work of all these different colors that are brought in to create this face, that I appreciate that also. What about you? But well, both Rodney and everybody else, what do you think about this? I'd love maybe you can put some comments in the chat or speak up. Do you like this?
Well, I don't know if I necessarily like it, but I find it interesting. And yeah, like he is always like so frequently, his tongue is part of his art. And I think you're right. There is maybe something sexual about that. But in my
with
mind,
the
not
with the title, it's like hard to
right.
hard to not at least think about that a little bit. And I don't know, tongues are kind of weird.
Yeah.
Just like from a like as a like fleshy bit of the body, if you think about it too much.
Well, yeah, and
Tongues are kind of weird. And
if you see a bust of
yeah,
somebody, you're almost never going to see their tongue,
yeah.
right? Yeah, it's something like it's almost like a private part, you know?
Yeah.
So and then this head is mine, which is kind of fun because it's this one's bronze, so kind of something more classical. It looks classical, right? But then it's on top of this really weird pedestal, which says self on it. So what do you think is going on with that, Jeanette?
Well, of course, like you mentioned, he's using all of these like fancy elite, putting a bust on a pedestal, having a bronze head. But he can't do a straight. I mean, he can do straight art, but he's not going to. It's not him. It's not his style. So you've got to have this like weird eye in the middle of the pedestal. And to call it out as self, is also in some ways really interesting. You see titles of self portraits as self portrait, just self. It's like, this is me, this is self. It also has a little bit of just irreverence. And yeah, his Marcia says the pupil of the eye is also him. So if you can zoom in even closer, um
It says self
he
something on all these little things.
yeah, it's hard to see
All kinds of words that start with
with
self. That's
self, yeah.
self-conceit, self. I mean, I'm sure self. Yeah, so it's almost like a study in self and makes us think about what all
Yeah.
that means, right?
And I think that the eye shape is probably his eye, and then his
Yeah.
portrait is in
Yes.
the pupil of the eye.
He's looking at himself,
So yeah,
self-regard.
yeah.
Any thoughts out there in the audience? Marcia says the pupil of the eye is also Arneson. Yes. And Yeah, I don't know where this one is. It's one I found online, and I would love to go see it.
We've
And
got
what
a
what
comment
would
from Gail. She says, I am leaning towards the critics. I sense you as a self-absorbed narcissist. Boring. But if you want to do self-reflection, keep it to yourself already. On the other hand, the structure, execution, and size of the pieces is totally awesome. Yep. A lot of his critics were saying the same thing. It's like all this self, all this self. And also, but they were also commenting negatively on the structure and the execution, where I think no matter what you think of the content, there's something really intriguing about the way he's putting together art that's different than in even though he's part of a like a funk art movement that was happening, his style is unique and it is different. And when you see an Arneson work, you know it's his, not just
yeah.
because it's his face, but you can tell by the style of how he's working. And so he's really created something extraordinary here.
Yeah, I like when an artist has like a brand, and you when you see a Rene Magritte, you're just you know you've seen a Magritte. And when you see an artisan, and I have stumbled upon his work in other places when I wasn't expecting to, you immediately it just brings a smile to my face. But doesn't have to, we don't all have to agree on this.
Oh, of course.
Critics misspent talent. Oh, tell me more about that, Barsha. Misspent talent. Like, oh, that's what they said about him, that he had talent, but he was just doing this kitschy thing with it.
Well, it was just my thought about it. In other words, you cannot deny his abilities,
Yeah.
and even somewhat the range of how he presents self. But that didn't move the critics as much as their what sense of offense at what he was creating. I don't know. So
I don't know if the critics were offended so much as they just didn't believe it was art,
worthy.
capital A art. But if you think about other critics who have, all of Impressionism was considered not capital A art at the time by the critics. And, today,
Wow.
today, like impression was considered a slur. So, and then it was a slur that all the impressionists decided to adopt and make their own. And I feel like, that spirit is carried out differently, of course, here, where all of the slurs against Arneson he kind of took as his own. Critics, yeah, so critics uh, didn't believe that impressionists were like that was not capital A art at the time. This happens over and over in art history, and especially with anything contemporary. You don't really know what is going to stand the test of time until time has passed. And so I'm not surprised that anything that's different than the norm at the time, the canon at the time, uh, a lot of times critics will sort of scoff at that.
React negatively. I
Yeah.
love the analogy. Is Arneson universally loved now, the way Impressionism is, let's say, universally loved now?
Oh, absolutely not. I don't think he is universally loved.
Yeah.
Um, but
I don't think anything is quite as universally loved as Impressionism is now.
He's not.
I feel like that is a particular art movement that's really captured hearts. Um, and I don't know that Arneson ever will be quite as loved. And I think that's not because of his style. Impressionists were criticized for their style, but their content is universal. These beautiful scenes, or there's something human.
Yes.
But whereas Arneson's content was also subversive, not just his style. So I don't, I wonder if he was alive and you asked, my guess is he wouldn't want to be universally loved. He's like, you're missing the point if everybody loves me. But
Right.
I
Well,
don't know.
isn't he the good example of, I always tell people, when you come on my art tour, I want to know if you love something or if you hate something. And if you're indifferent, I mean, that tells us something too. But, I think the hope is you are going to have a reaction. And
Yeah.
I think for me, I think a lot of people would have a reaction to this, just like they would to like the Robert Rauschenberg white painting or something.
Well, thank you for the words that he was subversive in two ways. And so because it was his content, that's how he differs from Impressionism. I thank you for that.
Yeah. Let's move on. More stuff. Some more. We've got a whole lot of examples, and we'll get to some things that are not self-portraits. But here he is doing drawings of himself as kind of he hasn't he hasn't gotten all 60s yet at this point. Um, this is kind of interesting. Black and white television. It's I think him on a television. And then here's another one, Splat. At this point, he's been at it for a long time. And the other thing that's going on, though, is this may be an allusion to his health problems because he was dealing with cancer for a good long period towards the end of his life. I think he may have already been diagnosed at this point in 1981.
Yeah, I think it was a like decade long fight.
And then, so here's another mask with him underneath it, Balderdash.
And already we can see some things that you all pointed out before too. Like with Clown, we have him wearing a mask, but the mask is his face. And of course, he's got his tongue out. But it is this interesting almost hiding his face behind a mask, but the mask is his face too.
Right,
So
'cause they both have beards.
yeah. They both look like him,
Yeah,
but he's like there is still an inner and an outer
because
self.
we all have
Yeah.
masks,
Oh, of
right?
course.
Gail says she's having a reaction. Good, Gail. That's all we have. Have a reaction. Captain Ace. I know there was a story behind this. Wasn't there some story about him flying or something?
Or someone that he yeah in his family was flying. I don't remember the story, but I love looking at this because it brings in so many elements of just of him. So we have Captain Ace, and he was actually sort of celebrating a captain, but look at what is on his
He laid
helmet.
an egg on him, right?
Yeah, laid an egg, and look at those white streaks.
Yes.
So the bird, which I believe is a turkey, laid an egg and like pooped on his head. Yet this is in that tradition of creating a bust for a war hero kind of tradition. But what has turned around completely here is in this honoring bust, we've also got sort of sort of a reality, but an absurdist reality, and then the eyes are closed and kind of scrunched up. It's just he doesn't let you sort of sleep on it. You gotta look and wonder what is he doing.
Yeah. Couple comments. Marcia says, I was imagining his great absorption with himself may have been clinical. He needed to art for his own sake. Yeah, I think
Maybe, yeah.
he dabbled, says Gail, in many different mediums, pen and ink, bronze, ceramics, which is impressive. His mustache and beard are missing from the left side of his face. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of odd.
I think that this was like after someone who actually, I wish I could remember the story. I'm sorry, everyone, that I don't remember the story, but it was after someone who actually had um like an accident. I think that there's actually, you can see there's all sorts of asymmetry in this face. The beard and the mustache are missing, but there's also sort of the scar line coming down from the nostril um, on on the left side of the face, the right side, as we viewers are looking at it. There's that scar down, and then the nose is sort of bent in a different way. Um, and I think that this person really was a war hero or involved in something. Um, uh, but let's not prop them up so let's not forget everything.
I'm going to move on to one more. We've got a whole bunch more self-portraits. So here's another, the Vitruvian Man. He now it's still him, right? Um, so he has all these self-portraits, and here's a quote from him. He says, "So you use yourself, but this self is not the inner self. You end up acting, becoming someone else, although you use your own features." The thing that, the person that he really kind of reminds me of that I know, Jeanette, you and I both love is Joan Brown. Because Joan
Yeah.
Brown did so many paintings in which she is the subject. And there's that, she's really telling us so much about her life. What do you think of that contrast between Arneson and Joan Brown?
Oh, yeah. I think that I mean, Joan Brown also does some things where she's not taking herself too seriously that I really, really enjoy. And I like that she can place herself in these um, sort of in a fantasy too. I mean, also in reality, but in fantasy and imagine herself as 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 more, and it's something that I really appreciate about her work. And uh but I don't feel that but she's not as irreverent.
Yeah.
What about you? What are some of the things
You
that
know what
you
I'd like to know, and I'm gonna have to try to find this out. They traveled in the same circle. She, at one point was Manuel Neri's wife, who he was on the UC Davis
Mhm.
faculty. I'm not sure if she taught there or not, but they must have spent time together. Were they friends? Did they like each other? Did they respect each
Yeah.
other's art? I would love to know about that. I would secretly be hoping that they were. I would love um, if I could go back in time and smoke a joint with Joan Brown and Robert Arneson, that would be like heaven to me.
On a bench in Benicia.
And then Gail has a great comment here. Sorry to bang on, but can you imagine being married to this guy? Egads, talk about no air in the room. In my humble opinion, no surprise there were exes. Well, his first marriage did end in divorce. His second marriage, though, endured, and I feel like I think she had been one of his students, if I'm not remembering it correctly. And I know that we don't think that's such a great thing now, um, but they were together to the end of his life.
And he's like this quote says here, you know, his portraits aren't his inner self. They're that he's acting, and he's acting this part that is maybe far more narcissistic
Yeah,
than his actual self. It could be he's putting on this artistic front. And part of it might be this reaction to the critics that are saying, "Oh, this like nothing artist from California, this California artist, it's just a hippie," and like rolling their eyes. And so he's giving the artists or the critics that back um, in ways that are really interesting. And but I don't know how much to extrapolate as like his real his his real personality. Probably he's got some of it, but he might
There's
not be as insufferable as you're thinking.
there's a good catalog of I think it was an exhibition at I think it was SF MoMA that has some good biographical information. I remember we had this in the presentation. So Jeanette, talk to us about art hierarchies and how this applies here.
Yeah, I commented on this before. This is just part of the subversion is that there are hierarchies in the art world, like in every world, right? And that thinking especially at this time, but even now, there are hierarchies of medium. If you work in paint, that is a higher, quote unquote, higher art than if you work in ceramics, than if you work in glass, that if you work in textile, if you work in bronze, that's higher art. So there are hierarchies in terms of the medium. And so Arneson is working in a higher, like in a lower, a medium that's lower on this hierarchy. Now, this is all artificial. This is a construction by the elite art world, but it exists. There are hierarchies of style as well, and this is existed throughout the art world. It used to be um like a landscape was higher than a genre painting, so there's a style involved too, and his style, not just his medium, but the way he creates the style of his ceramic work or his drawings, is also not quite that elite artwork style. The subject matter, for sure, it can be vulgar. It's definitely not sort of this elite art style. And then, of course, location. He was based on the West Coast. So he has these sort of four elements that I'm thinking that he comes in lower on all of these elite art hierarchies. And I think what he does with that, though, is he uses that as a whole package. He uses all of these angles and being lower in order to create something that is completely unique to him. And so I just thought that it was important to mention that if you're a person that goes to the museum all the time and you have an idea of art, like what art is, and then you face Arneson and you're like, that doesn't check my boxes. It's on purpose, and he's doing it on purpose, and it's part of this sort of subversive art movement that also ties into like the funk art movement that was happening at the time.
Yeah, and then speaking about so this is one that definitely speaks to that subversion, right?
Yeah,
Um, so urinal in could there be any more direct allusion to Marcel Duchamp's Fountain, the famous thing where he went out and bought a urinal and signed a fictitious
signed.
name to it, Armut, and and then put it up in an exhibition.
Yeah.
So,
Where
so
we're really asking, like, what is art? Art is, and what Marcel Duchamp, his answer to that was sort of like, art is what the artist says it is. And yeah, this is this direct descent from that, and really art is what the artist says it is.
and then since we're getting a little short on time, I want to skip to probably what is undoubtedly his most controversial work, which is this portrait of George. This is a George Moscone bust that was commissioned after he was assassinated by Dan White in 1978. And Arneson was commissioned to do this, and this was delivered and pretty much rejected. It outraged a lot of people in San Francisco. I don't know how many, just maybe many of you remember all that. What really offended people were these words that were on the pedestal. Twinkies, of course, is a reference to Dan White's defense, which is that he had been consuming a lot of junk food, and that's what led to him assassinating Harvey Milk and George Moscone. Um, other things are more just about Moscone's life that are less provocative, but it's just seen as a very it was seen as being disrespectful of George Moscone. Um, Jeanette, what are your thoughts on? Do you feel that this is appropriate, inappropriate? Have you seen it? Have you ever seen it live?
Yeah, I feel it's very Arneson. um, which is gonna be it's I'm like maybe a little bit inappropriate um for its purpose. For art, I feel like it's important and it's part of Arneson's work and what he does as an artwork. Um, but of course, it was commissioned to commemorate George Moscone, and I can understand why people were offended, because I mean we've talked about this already. It also is that a bust was to commemorate someone, to glorify them, to honor them, and throughout his work he's not doing that. He's showing a hero, but then like pooping on the head, it's like there is none of that in Arneson's work. And so I'm not sure what they were thinking when they had him uh were in
I
this
suppose.
commission. But as artwork, I almost think that all of the things that make it inappropriate for a commemoration make it a better artwork. Ooh, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you totally disagree with me?
Um, oh, didn't the base have some bullet holes in it? I
Yes.
did it, and we just don't see that in this
I think
view.
that there is um like either a act
I
like
think
a
you're right
yeah.
about that. Yeah. Um, it was probably too soon for something like
Yeah.
this. I think why they picked him was because they didn't want to do something that was just standard, because this was these two figures, Moscone and Milk, had come out of San Francisco and represented kind of a period of upheaval in change, I think, for the better, right? Gay rights, uh, much more acceptance of all kinds of minorities and immigrants and so on. Um, and so they didn't want to commemorate him in some standard way, but there's a humor in Arneson's work that just is jarring in the face of an assassination
Yeah.
just a few years
And
after it happened.
to be fair, he didn't have any of the extra in the submission for the piece. He had like just the column George Moscone and his bust, but he didn't have any of the extra on the column in the submission for the commission. So they were voting on this without all of that extra. And so but yeah, I mean it's yeah,
And if I remember correctly, it was displayed at the De Young Museum for a period. I'm pretty sure that's true, but then they got rid of it. The SF MoMA collection actually acquired it, and today it is very rarely shown, which I kind of would love to challenge the museum. I think they really should put it back on
yeah.
display. I do have a quote from an art critic. He said, "It is a work that actually promoted a broad segment of the public to think and debate, as distinct from the mildly approving but basically indifferent reaction to the more innocuous sort of embellishments generally found in public edifices." So that kind of is reflecting what you and I both said, Jeanette, that that's
Yeah.
why they made this decision.
I mean, what really makes art is it has to be thought provoking. If you're passing by something and it does not provoke any thought, it's like you mentioned before, you love it or you hate it. If you're totally indifferent, then it kind of turns into like decoration to you, instead of art. Art is thought provoking. And and maybe because I wasn't in San Francisco, part of that at the time, that I've encountered this work well after the fact, that I can appreciate it for what it was trying to do, even though it is distasteful.
And we have some comments in chat that I want to read.
Yeah.
Uh, Peter and Kevin say it was disturbing when I first saw it. And Gail asks, oh, and Marcia points out the column mimics a graffiti wall. I think that's a great observation. Gail asks, where is the Moscone bust now? It's in the collection of SF MoMA, but not on display. Peter and Kevin say the humor would be Arneson responding to criticism with too soon. Like, I guess when is, I mean, that's his job is to provoke and make us uncomfortable, I think.
Yeah.
Nikki was saying, was it in City Hall? And I'm just not, I'm not sure I know the answer to that.
Oh,
Um, so there's another related work that he did called Five Times for Harvey, which is the name comes from the fact that Dan White shot Harvey Milk 5 times. And I think what this work makes clear to me is that Arneson was horrified by what happened. And this is Harvey Milk, the martyr. Harvey Milk, I love that he has the smile on his face, even though we know the sad fate that he had because Harvey Milk was a man of joy and one who, you just can't imagine anybody representing pride more than Harvey Milk did. And I feel like we get that from this portrait. But Jeanette, what do you think of this?
it feels like it's showing how, because I mean, the 5 times alludes to the 5 shots, but it also showing his face 5 times in 5 different ways also to me shows the complexity of a person, that he was not just one thing. And you might have, yes, he embodies pride and we think of him as fighting for gay rights, but he had so many facets to him and he was doing all of this work, um and I so that also feels like something that you can get in this series like this.
Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that it's showing different sides of Harvey Milk. I think the second one shows him with another silhouette. So
Yeah.
maybe him as just a man who loved other men. Uh, and I,
Or just even part of community.
yeah,
And he was a big part of community. He wasn't an individual. I mean, he was, but like always thinking about the community. So it's a really nice way to remember him, I think.
yeah,
Even though it's a a horrible the 5 times refers to this horrible
the,
death,
the sadness, but also the
assassination.
joy.
Yeah.
Let's move on to some other works that I think a good way to end. So if you go to the UC Davis campus, they have these what are called eggheads that Arneson created in different places. And let's see, this is yin and yang. Um, so like two these they're in kind of contrast with each other. This is my favorite. This is like right in front of the law school. See no evil, hear no evil. So um, one is blind and the other has, I guess they both are blind and have no ears. and they're looking at each other, but
They're just talking heads.
they're just talking heads. Here's the book head, which is in front of the library, of course. And here he is. This is not long before he died in 1992. Stargazer looking up at the sky. And then this is my favorite, Eye on Merak. And this is in front of the administration building.
And Merak is like the name of the building that the
Yeah,
administration built, if you're not familiar with UC Davis
okay.
campus.
They keep
So,
being vigilant. And
yeah.
then here it is. It's got the eye once again. And then we'll conclude with this one, which is another public artwork that he has in Benicia Bench. And there he is with his tongue out once again, a little duck looking at him. Kind of a fitting way to end our discussion of Robert Arneson. Gail has some nice thoughts in chat. Thank you, Gail. Thanks to everyone who participated.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you.
and thank you, Jeanette. Always great talking to you about art. And you know that you and I have these artists like Joan Brown and Robert Arneson that we both enjoy together and we can discuss. So thanks for
Yeah.
coming on Art
And
Viewing
I really
Adventures.
love that we're able to highlight some more of the local artists that have been shaped by and help shape the art world and the culture here in the Bay Area, because this is a pretty nice place to be.
Yeah, in the best possible
Yeah.
way.
And hopefully things like this, because there's so much public artwork of Arneson's, that you can actually, if you're in Davis, you can go to the campus. If you're in Benicia, you can see some of these works um, just out and about in life. And so, if you have a chance, it's a great thing to do.
Oh. Well, thanks, Jeanette. Thanks for all that. And we'll go back to you, Nikki. Tell us more about what's happening with the Community Living Campaign.
Okay. Hi, everybody. That was fun looking at all those different artworks. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. The biggest thing coming up is again what I spoke of earlier is Jennifer's work during Pride Month, and she's having an event Thursday, which is going to be the what's it called, Jennifer? I want to say hide and go seek. It's not.
It's Disability Rights Treasure Hunt,
Yeah,
which
the
I will be
treasure
taking
hunt,
part in
the
too.
treasure hunt. So if you,
Yeah, it's gonna be
and that's
great.
yeah, I got that in the chat again. So if you want to read more about it, it's on our webpage, it's in our calendar, and you can write to Jennifer directly and talk to her about it. So that's all for today. Appreciate
All
everybody coming out. Thank you. When will we see
right.
you again, Rodney? When
See you
we
in a couple weeks. If
couple
you're
weeks.
you're gonna be off. So
I'll be off. Yeah. So take care, everybody. I'll see
we'll
you.
be back in 2 weeks with more art viewing adventures. So
Okay.
long, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Jennifer.
Bye.